Hello everyone, this is Nathan Black. This is for Amber's 4530 Creative Writing as a Profession course. And sorry, it was a little, here's a little bit messed today. But I wanted to talk about the Roundup for creativity in music. It should probably come as no surprise that there is definitely a connection between the two. There seems to be, at least from classical literature, religious literature from long ago, works that have lasted throughout the ages and such, there is definitely a connection between either poetry and the epic poetry of Milton and Homer and the Odyssey, things like that. The Aeneid, these works were set up in a very poetic style. Even something like the Norse mythology is done in poetic eddas. And so there is a very thin line between what is poetry and sort of what is lyric, verse being almost interchangeable when you're talking about the structure of lyrics and when they become poetry. The Psalms, as it appears in the Bible, are meant more to be sung, but we don't sort of have the same cadence, the same flow and syntax as the Hebrew from which it comes from. So that is massively different, so we read them more. What I'm sort of gathering from this is the idea that music is sort of, we recognize that in some ways as sort of the high art, or at least when it reaches that level. Shakespeare has that with his iambic pentameter as it moves from back and forth, la da 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 da, up and down. And we recognize this in some ways as being that flourish of brilliance. And these were very highly sought after in antiquity. It just comes through. And I used as the opening line for my roundup the line from Twelfth Night. Said, if music be the food of love, play on. You have that sort of recognition for the idea that music feeds emotion, and where most art comes from has to start somewhere with that. One of my favorite movies of all time even, I think, recognizes that. It's Almost Famous, where he mentions, beautiful people have no spine. Their art never lasts. Real art comes from pain and suffering. Is sort of, it has to come from that deeper emotion, and I think music really taps into that. It heightens our brain and allows us to tap into those places that words and understanding and logic just can't. You see that sort of in debates over religious theory and such like that at times, but it's not exactly always 100% certain. Quotes that I pulled and found as I was going around, I was looking at, was Gary Provost's from his book. I vary the sentence length and I create music. The writing sings. It has a pleasant rhythm, a lilt, a harmony, and that's sort of what it's gathering at. As it goes into it, it's not just flowery, but it's the way we recognize somebody who is saying something that they know and when they don't, or at least what's the focus that we use to latch onto and grasp. Music also helps to focus us and allows us to. There are so many playlists nowadays of music that you can listen to focus. And I even used a link in my roundup to lo-fi hip-hop beats to study and relax to. It seems silly, but it's very popular. It's something I have used in the past. I probably will use it again. And there are studies that back this up. Harvard to speech and music therapy. There are all sorts of studies that are out there. I've added one or two of them in my paper as well. Um, there is even from personal experience in my own life, I've seen this. Music stirs something inside of us that only it can. Uh, Even patients who have Alzheimer's suddenly seem to come back alive a little bit when they hear music that they recognize and speaks inside of them. So whereas before they're almost inert, almost completely gone, music brings them back. Uh, it's that recognition, those crystallized thoughts, those synapses that were so strong within inside of us. That comes out as well. They even talked about this in nuns who were in in their cloister. They literally had Alzheimer's, but they still functioned almost as if they didn't at all, just because of how much they had a connection to their daily activities and such. They had done it so many times. And then finally, as I mentioned, music taps into emotion, and that is that emotion that really only music can do. It taps into those deeper parts of us that, as I mentioned, is just something that logic and reason can't always do. It needs that catalyst, and music ends up being that. I quoted Arthur Golden, who wrote Memoirs of Geisha. He talked about a poem called Loss, and mentioned that the poet had scratched out the words to it because you can't read loss, only feel it. And this goes into the Hemingway quote that people attribute to him, but it's actually not him, it's somebody else. Write drunk, edit sober. Once again, getting into that idea that emotion is where you start from, but where you end is with your logical breakdown of craft. But you have to start with that emotion, and music ends up being that place that possibly it can start from, or at least the thing that can channel it through, or at least lead it along. You may have the words or the idea, but music can literally bring it forth even more. And that's the creativity that we need to tap into. It's the funnel, it's the fire, but our logic and our craft ends up being the fan that makes it come alive.